What were you told to keep secret about a company you worked for, but you don't work there anymore, so, F those guys? Part 2. I have an experiment for you. Take a thin stack of regular index cards, and go to your local Walmart. Go to the fresh chicken section. The long clear plastic strip at the front of the shelf can be lifted up out of the black shelf. Lift it up. Take your index cards, and place it where the plastic was. Now run it, without lifting it up, to the end of the shelf. If half-rotten chicken guts don't fall out of that shelf, then you are at a cleaner Walmart than I've ever been in. Odds are, you'll be able to see and smell them caked all over the bottom of the plastic thing as soon as you pull it out of the shelf. When I worked at Walmart, I always waited until the place was practically devoid of customers before I pulled those shelves apart to clean them. Well, when I worked at Subway, the tuna that came vacuum packed said, "Dolphin safe," and then one day, did not say, "Dolphin safe." Then lo and behold, a few months later, back on the package, in big letters, "Dolphin safe." Also, we definitely were told to use up stuff if it was only a day or two over the use by date. Edit. So, apparently I was wrong about Dolphin safe. It's still sad though, that they get caught in and killed with the tuna. Female co-worker filed a complaint because a male co-worker slapped her ass. I watched management have him sign his paperwork for a written warning, and then I watched management shred it while the female co-worker was at lunch. I worked in HR for them at the time. I can confirm, they made no formal documentation of anything that happened that day. They shredded the only paperwork that even acknowledged it happened. I worked at CVS, and we had a guy go back to the pharmacy, reach over the counter, and grab a tray full of filled prescription papers, and ran out the emergency exit. These papers included private information on dozens of our customers. Names, numbers, addresses, meds they are on, etc. There was virtually no reason for that information to be so easily accessible, or out in the open, even behind the counter. Some tech really screwed up, but the kicker was, my store manager who told everyone not to tell anyone, or report it, because it wasn't that big of a deal. All I could think about were all of my regular customers that had come in that day. Called HR that night, and reported him. Turns out, it was a big deal. Full-on investigation, big deal. Every single one of our customers had to be called and informed of a breach, because there was no way to know whose prescriptions were in that tray and whose weren't. We lost a lot of clients. At a certain chicken establishment, we had deep fryers that you put chicken into, locked them up, waited on the machine's timer, and pulled them out. It was 3 minutes and 30 seconds long. In rushes, when we were low on chicken, they made us open the machines up earlier, before they were fully cooked, by sometimes a full minute. I didn't work there that long. I managed a food joint at a Six Flags when I was 16. But a 16-year-old running a food establishment is not even the worst part. We literally watered down the nacho cheese about 50-50. I grilled chicken for 10 hours a day on the same grill, without time to clean it, so, by the end of the day, there was a quarter-inch of gunk built up. I had new crew members every day, who had never worked there before. My managers would take their breaks when we needed to close, but we couldn't leave until they checked our work, so we would just sit for a good 30 minutes before we could go home. I ended up getting fired because I accidentally bumped a hidden security camera while cleaning in the back room. KFC intentionally starves older team members to prevent them from bringing the labor budget up, and when they quit, due to lack of shifts, they don't get paid out, because technically it's them quitting. Just think about that for a moment. The only people above 18 in the store are likely the management staff. The people cleaning the dishes your food is prepped on, cooking your food, preparing your food, packaging your food, and handing it to you, are 15 to 17-year-olds, with exactly as much maturity as you would expect. Don't get me wrong, a lot of them are pretty good for their age, but still, all it takes is one kid angry at their boss, for whatever reason, to forget a step, or stuff up, and bam! You're sick for 4 days with food poisoning. Edit. A few points, since people are both agreeing and disagreeing. 1. I'm not in the States. A lot of American KFC workers may very well have different experiences. 2. I'm speaking about my area in particular, which consisted of about half a dozen stores. This may have ended when I left, or it may be that I have a skewed perception. I've been wrong before, and I might be wrong now. This was also several years ago, so things could have changed radically. Worked in a state-level congressional office. State legislator's office. Edit, poor word choice. All those calls and letters you guys write to your lawmakers about issues you care about don't really matter. Calls get entered into a log, nobody reviews. Letters get entered into a log, nobody reads, and then thrown away. The elected official will only even ask about calls or letters if they already care about an issue. Then usually, they will ask their staffers to keep /against tally to use when they argue the issue on the floor. Example, the member I worked for felt a certain way about abortion. Some local groups launched a letter-writing campaign to let the member know that they disagreed with his position on abortion. These letters were collected over the few days they came in, and then thrown away. There are only two groups of people I would say actually influence the member's vote: staffers and lobbyists. They're the ones who review issues and recommend up or down votes. You want to effect change? Get a lobbyist, or become one. Convince a legislative staffer, or become one. TLDR, calls and letters to your representatives generally don't do shit. Edit, whoa. This really blew up. I expected it to get buried. So, let me clarify, based on a few things. 1. Individual letters do get read, and if we thought they were important or interesting, they would get passed along to the member for his viewing. 2. There is a lot of communication with constituents. My member had a whole staff of people, just to deal with the problems and needs of his constituents. It's just that, when it comes to hot-button topics, like abortion, the member has usually made up their mind, and doesn't want to be bombarded constantly with what their constituents think about that issue. For the most part, they already know. 3. Form letters. I saw someone mention these. We did these too. If someone called in, or wrote a letter, expressing an opinion, usually they would get a letter back, with the member's opinion on the issue. However, if we got too many, it just would take too much time to write 10,000 stock letters about abortion. They don't hate the interns that much. 4. I generally loved my time working for this member. It was a really positive experience, and confirmed for me that in the future, I want to work in politics or government. Just wanted to let y'all know about my experience. Worked at McDonald's as a teenager, in the kitchen there. As a cook, we were trained that whenever we hear a timer go off on a tray in the patty warmer, we press the button to reset, and do nothing else. When I was training to be a manager, we were taught that the timers were the recommended safe time for a patty to sit in the warmer, and all the patties in the tray that timed out should be thrown away. As a cook, we would often have trays that had their timers reset 5+ times in a row before the patties were served from them. I worked in a coffee shop where they would buy individually packaged muffins in bulk, like the kind you see in convenience stores. They would then have us remove them from their packaging and wrap them in saran wrap and sell them as homemade for over twice the price as what they sold literally next door at the gas station. I always enjoyed the compliments I got for my baking skills. Worked at a mid-sized ad agency, around 200 employees. That was, and probably still is, a house of cards. Basically the agency was, like in Mad Men, where they had one large client, essentially funding the whole company. If I were to guess, I'd think probably about 95% of the revenue came from one client. In this agency's case, the client was a US government agency, and for months, our project manager would tell us to bill all of our hours to that client, no matter what we were working on, especially if we had nothing to work on at all. It wasn't a secret, either, it was pretty much a running joke to just bill everything to that client. It felt really shady, but I don't know that anything was necessarily illegal or in violation of the contract. From what I understood, there was basically a huge pile of money allotted for years at a time, and the ad agency needed to bill for it, or just not receive it. If we ran low on billed hours, near the end of a contract, there would just be a rush to catch it all up. I've heard that many/most large government contracts work this way, but I have a feeling, if the client knew what was going on, the contract negotiations would probably go a bit different the next time. Worked for the United Nations. There's a list of global corporations they refuse to work with or accept donations from, because they are considered basically evil. It's not publicly available info, even to most people who work in the UN system, but if you try to work with a company on the list, and you send the proposal up the food chain, eventually you'll get shut down. Don't have a list to share, but maybe someone else does. Some very well-known brands are on it. At Hot Topic, They warned about having low units per transaction, or UPT as they called it. If a customer only wanted to buy one thing, we were supposed to try and pressure them into buying related items. The store I was at had a box of shitty little pin-on buttons that we had to suggest to everyone at checkout. I've been waiting a while for a thread like this. F Home Depot. They have a department called Home Depot Interiors. Do not have your home remodeled by HDI, people, come on. The specific department I worked for was cabinet refacing. I was a salesman for about 4 to 5 months before I got the F out of there. Here's the deal. Anytime you have a salesman come into your home to give you a pitch, and he or she brings samples and has a little presentation, please know that their commission on your remodel job is sometimes as high as 20%. That means, if you buy a kitchen remodel for $20,000, your salesperson just took home up to $4,000 of your money, just for selling you this rip-off remodel, and sitting in your house for a few hours. That's $4,000 you could use for all top-of-the-line, new appliances. Also, when it comes to cabinet refacing, it's a waste of effing money. They work so hard to spin the information, to make you believe that you're getting this incredible service, when, in reality, the only benefit is that they can remodel the kitchen in like 3 to 4 days versus a couple weeks, if you pay a contractor to do it properly. I have had customers show me a bid from a contractor for, literally, half the price of refacing, and they would receive an actual full remodel with all new cabinets. The sales process is dishonest. You are taught to bend the truth as far as possible, without technically lying, but then, once you start working with the salesmen, who have been there a while, you are taught to full-on lie and cheat and, basically, steal from people. This comes in the form of over-measuring everything. Countertops, cabinets, flooring. Everything is measured, keeping a huge cushion, so, when the customer inevitably tries to haggle with you, you can bring the price down and still make money. This type of stuff is so pervasive in virtually 100% of in-home sales. Solar panels, windows, vacuum cleaners, security systems, you are getting ripped off. Your haggling skills don't mean shit, because these people eat, breathe, sleep, thinking about clever ways to rip you off. True salesmen are sharks who adore money and nothing will stop them from getting yours. It's totally crooked, but because it's a deeply ingrained mentality in the entire sales culture, it's hard to weed out the few good ones. DR. In-home sales are a huge rip-off, at best, and a legit scam, at worst. Save your money and try to find companies who simply give normal estimates, without a big dog and pony show, with some head wearing pleated khakis, a polo shirt, and briefcase, showing up at your door. Real workmen wear regular clothes. Note: Home Depot. I told your CEO, your national HR director, and your legal team, that I would do everything I could to sink your stupid cabinet refacing ship. I worked out of the HDI San Antonio office, and you know how bad you effed me, and all those other hopeful salespeople, by being dishonest about earnings. Come at me, bro. Edit all these posts about I worked for a large national chain. Grow some balls, and start naming names. I used to work for Secrets, Minerals from the Dead Sea. It's one of those annoying kiosks in Canada. So many shady things. The one I worked at was not in Victoria. First thing was offering free samples of lotion. You were only supposed to talk to people if they look at you or your kiosk, thus indicating interest, so we're not soliciting. My boss, who was Israeli, would badger me into constantly asking anyone even if they didn't look. He told me that Israelis were better salespeople, but he couldn't get any to Canada yet. We were called out so many times, and a few times the mall would fine us, but he didn't care, and that's the minor stuff. There were no listed prices, just a minimum price. So, I was told to judge people on their experience, and try to get them to spend as much as possible. Nail kit equals minimum $15. I was told to start selling at $89.99. If they weren't interested in that price, to say, "Oh, I'm sorry, that's buy one, get one." Still not interested? Pretend to use a calculator to figure out a new price for one. How about I use my employee discount to get you one for $40? Still too much? I'll throw in some free soap and lotion, minimum price $5 and $10 each, so Secrets was still making a profit. Told to physically hold on to people when I gave them a lotion sample and start buffing one of their nails. We said that they could always come back for new nail buffer pads. The ones in the box were crappy and didn't work if they were old, We replaced ours daily. The serum trick was the worst. Sold the serum for upwards of $100. Told to get someone to put both their arms out, palms up. Put serum on left arm, and let it absorb, while talking about how it helps our wrinkle repair work better, and absorb more lotion into skin. Put same amount of lotion on both arms. On right arm, only use 2 fingers to rub the lotion in, and do it quickly and poorly. On left arm, where serum is, use whole hand, while talking up serum's magical abilities. People never caught on, and would be in awe, buying way overpriced serum. I felt especially bad for the elderly, who would buy after I offered the first price, or when my boss made fake claims that our products cure psoriasis and other skin ailments. He would want 1,000 in sales a day, and give us days off if we couldn't deliver, meaning no pay for those days. I only achieved 1,000 once, with his help and pushing. I quit as soon as I found another job, a month later. I got sucked into one of these kiosks lately. Not this brand, but same idea. The guy literally wouldn't let go of my hand when I tried to pull away. Also wouldn't allow me to rub in the lotion myself. You think I can't tell that you're doing it differently on one hand and the other? I was a TA for one of the larger universities in the Midwest, working on my doctorate. One day, my laptop was stolen from my office. Filed a police report, assumed it was a lost cause. But only a limited number of people have access to that office, so it bothered me. I had my suspicions about an individual, but no proof. Explanation from building superintendent: homeless man brought ladder in and climbed over ceiling boards at night. Apparently, this had happened before, and the guy was still floating around, somehow. Also curiously, my office mate had had some checks stolen, and attempted to cash a few weeks prior, so I had reason to believe this was wrong, and something else was going on. Things don't just walk away from locked offices. Week later, I'm on the pot late at night, and walk out to find my laptop and half a dozen other valuables, including a checkbook, staring at me across the hall. In the open janitor's closet, he was down the hall, cleaning another office. So, I grab it all, run back to my office, and call campus police. They show up, take report, collect stolen items, call it a day. Next day, super calls me into office, and tells me that I was wrong, and found that stuff in the hallway, and that I need to amend my report, clearly implying that my enrollment was at stake. What he doesn't know is that I had already completed my grad requirements, and there was no way in hell they could legally pull them. I made copies of everything, all electronic and paper, lots of trail, to cover my ass. I'd already had tons of problems getting what I need, and I wasn't going to let them win, so I went back to the campus police and told them what happened. Turns out, the janitorial staff shouldn't have even been there at the time I found those things. They were scheduled for much later at night. A week later, the campus cops came back and said they had to drop the case because it had been resolved. At this point I don't trust anyone, so I call the real cops. They take a report and can't believe what they're hearing. Detective says protecting students in a rough town is a top priority, and thanks me for this information. Couple of months later, newspaper article detailing how school had been hiring without any background check at all, hiring or paying under the table, including ex-cons and people with active arrest warrants. They had even been using the place to distribute drugs. Whole janitorial and grounds department gets turned over within days. Big public apology. I still got my doctorate. TLDR, everybody got fired because I would not go quietly into the night. Geek Squad memberships are a total rip-off. It takes longer for their services to complete. Bitdefender will slow down and F up your computer. We didn't troubleshoot things, just tell you something is broken to get you to buy stuff, and Clearplex is just thick saran wrap. It costs less than 2 cents per sheet. We were told explicitly, you are not a computer technician, you are a salesperson. This isn't a computer repair job, and I don't care if you can fix them, you're here to sell services. I am a certified computer technician, and F those scumbags. I walked so many people, cause it was bad for them to have us work on their stuff. UPS gave me an entire safety orientation on proper lifting on the job, and applying warning tape to packages over 70 pounds. They, however, did not follow either rule, as I was expected to get things done faster than proper lifting or warning tape application would allow. I was also fired after my manager neglected to inform me that I was supposed to perform certain duties on the line I was working. Not to mention, your packages are usually never handled with care, but that's the trade-off of receiving next-day shipping. I also worked at Job Corps. Plenty of students were allowed to graduate, because they were favored by the coach or counselors. They also implemented a co-ed dormitory in a dorm that was meant for girls only. Not to mention, I know of several instances where a female residential advisor hooked up with a younger male student. As a young male, I was never allowed to work the female dorm, which was okay with me. However, they allowed young females to work the male dorms. That's where problems arose. One male student hooked up with a 40-year-old female and got addicted to meth, thanks to her. Last I heard of them both, she was pregnant, and he was in jail for domestic assault. Don't get me wrong. Job Corps does have success stories, but the cost is questionable. Worked in the kitchen at a Wetherspoons pub chain in UK. If anything went out of date, we simply changed the date on it, so it now says it goes out of date tomorrow instead. If something fresh didn't sell well, but we already had lots of it prepared, this would happen with steaks and fish mostly. The dates would get repeatedly changed until it went brown or stank, and then it would get put on special. Managers' bonuses were, in part, based on wastage. Lower wastage equals higher bonus. Also, we got pretty much everything pre-portioned, frozen, and so at least part, if not all, of your meal will be microwaved. In general, the later you come in, the more kitchen equipment we have turned off and cleaned, so more of it goes in the mics. Send back your food because it's cold? That's going in the microwave. That job seriously broadened my mind to what exactly you can cook using microwaves alone. We also didn't get breaks. They would even tailor shift lengths so that you would get the shortest legal length breaks that we would get shouted at for taking, anyway. For example, a 5-hour shift gives you 15 minutes break, but a 4:45 shift gives you no break. Guess which one they give you? Not a company I work for, but one I work with, Groupon. Although no one has asked me to keep quiet about any of this, I imagine they would if they could. I own and run a tourism business in a major city, and frequently interact with Groupon. I am pretty sure Groupon is padding their sales and laundering money, as well as arbitrarily labeling certain products as top sellers in order to artificially drive sales. Why do I believe this? Countless overpurchases and refunds for guests who never actually attend. Sometimes multiple of these unusual transactions will post so quickly that it would have been impossible for a human being to have accomplished the processes using a keyboard. Dodgy answers from company representatives when confronted about aberrant ticketing and refunding. Watching my business become a top seller on days when we made no sales at all. Sometimes being labeled this during weeks where we made no sales at all. Shady disclosure practices about portions of sales kept in escrow by Groupon. Groupon offers businesses a ledger through their merchant center that intentionally avoids disclosing what portion of your sales they are withholding, even though this is an easily calculated figure, 20% of gross sales. When speaking to Groupon representatives, they will always dodge confirming this figure in writing. At times, I have been verbally quoted less than half of the figure that should have been withheld per our contracts. Founder and chairman Eric Lefkowski's shady history of over-leveraged business deals that somehow end up twisted, bizarre and preferential treatment from Credit Suisse, cashing out immediately after IPOs, unusual lawsuits, and even alleged death threats. I am not entirely sure what I think is truly going on there, but I can smell it, and it is no bueno. I worked for a privately owned company, offering customized data programs, plus data entry and analysis services. We had a contract with Ontario's Emergency Medical Services. My job was to decipher and enter 15 years' worth of data from ambulance call reports covering 2 counties into the database designed by our company in order to bring the province up to date before the big hospital merger in 2008. When the job was done, instead of picking up another government contract, my boss sold her house and moved out of the country in a hurry with over $1 million. That's when I found out that the entire contract was illegal. Some hospital admin didn't want to deal with the job they were given, so they illegally outsourced it to our company on the sly, allowing my boss to take a truckload of classified documents off hospital grounds every week. I wasn't allowed to tell anybody because the scandal would have delayed the merger and cost the region tons of money, in fines, investigations, and replanning. I hate being someone's dirty little secret. It feels really grapey.